And we are live. Good to see that participants are going up as we start. I'll give it a minute or so before we start the actual webinar. But just so you know, I suspect that everyone that is attending knows who we've got today, but we've got the lovely team from Sainsbury's. And what we'll be going through today is we named the topic from depot to Doorstep, the technology behind a retail giant. And what will happen is the team will take you through all their areas as we go along. As always, for anyone that's attended these events before, if you can put all your questions into the Q&A function, which you will find at the bottom of your page on Zoom, we will endeavour to answer as many of these as we can as we go along. We have siphoned off 20 minutes at the end, so 15 to 20 minutes in order to answer as many of these questions as we can, so you'll get lots of time. If you want to have conversations as we go along that aren't Q&A related, you can use the panelists and attendees functionality, and conversation will go in along there. I guess as a start, just while we wait for all the attendees to, all the attendees to join as well, I'm sure we're not the only ones that have children at home, so please bear with us during this time. The reality is that we're all going through an interesting year, so I think we will be fine, but if there's anything that happens on that side, then bear that in mind. Cool, attendees seem to be going up pretty well, so I think we can start. So from an agenda perspective, like I say, all the speakers will be going through who they are at the start, but if we want to focus on the agenda which we're going through today, so it would be modelizing Sainsbury's integration estate, cloud infrastructure in Azure, logistics at Apollo, cloud engineering at Sainsbury's, and then obviously, like I mentioned, at the end there'll be a Q&A section. So Lorraine.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorraine Kibble, and I'm an integration engineering manager working in the commercial domain of Sainsbury's Tech. So just a little bit of background about me. I started my career at Sainsbury's almost 6 years ago as an integration engineer, building enterprise services before moving into a leadership role, where I now lead 2 engineering teams that are primarily focused on modernising our integration estate and also building the strategic reusable services. I'm going to share with you today how we've evolved as a team from being specialist engineers in our legacy tool sets to being multi-skilled software engineers in open source technologies, delivering value to our business at pace. And just to give you a brief insight into our legacy integration estate before sharing our journey, it's primarily built on licensed products, built on-premise and managed by a centralized team. The tool sets in our estate are a mixture of real-time integration products, a batch ETL tool, and a managed file transfer tool. The development lifecycle for our legacy tool sets is slow, as we've no CI/CD pipelines in place, very few, if any, automated tests written, and it's a fairly manual process for deploying code through the environments and multiple environments before reaching production. As our production environment is managed by production support teams, we're very much dependent on their availability for deployments, with production support tasks taking priority. So next slide, please. So a couple of years ago, there was a change in our integration strategy as we adopted a cloud-first approach across the business and products moved into the cloud. Our principal enterprise architect and engineer devised a great set of principles for teams to follow. Firstly, we made a conscious decision to move away from the expensive integration tool sets to build reusable components that are discoverable, publish our data as an event stream and as near to real time as possible, and make it easy for others to consume, with consumers adopting the data for their own needs, to build resilient services in the cloud that are self-healing, to build our infrastructure as code, and to stop building new business logic into systems and technology we plan to retire. Next slide, please. So when we started this journey, our Sainsbury's Tech colleagues had limited specialist skills, limited knowledge of open source technologies. Engineers had no prior knowledge on working in the cloud, no prior knowledge of DevOps practices, no prior knowledge of writing automated tests, and no prior knowledge of CI/CD pipelines. And we were one large integration team. Next slide, please. So we created a vision. We wanted to build stable integration teams working in an agile way. We realised that one current team was too big, so they self-organised into 2 separate teams with our agile coaches supporting us in the transformation into agile ways of working. And we wanted to adopt a continuous learning approach. So initially we used contract SMEs for upskilling team members, with pair programming being adopted for the first 18 months. The team are now independently working at pace, and should we have any queries, we now reach out to colleagues from within the Sainsbury's Tech community. We also created a Pluralsight channel with relevant courses, and we bring learning into our sprints, as well as having protected learning time each week. We've incorporated DevOps practices to shorten the development life cycle and supporting in production what we build. We also adopted the mantra "in the build we trust," as we know our CI/CD pipeline is a key enabler to delivering value at pace. Our code is built, the code that we build is self-healing, alerting only when necessary. So we build retry mechanisms and have adopted an auto recovery approach for all services, only alerting when repeated failures have occurred within a specified time window. We incorporated retry logic when connecting to on-premise databases and also when using AWS services or connecting to things like S3 buckets, as the last thing I want for my teams is for them to be disturbed for false alerts in the middle of the night. Our engineers are T-shaped, and by that we mean they don't just build code, they design solutions, carry out analysis, and working alongside our cloud engineers, build our infrastructure as code. And we've also adopted a continuous maintenance approach. It's important that we inspect and improve continuously, keeping our services and infrastructure up to date. I'm keen to not put something on the shelf just because it's functioning correctly. And finally, we've moved to small, frequent deliveries rather than batching of changes to ensure that we can easily identify any issues that may occur, and also to deliver value to the business sooner. We're not quite delivering multiple times a day yet, but we are delivering multiple times a week. Next slide, please. So our current state, as a team, we have full autonomy of the tech stack that we choose to adopt, with some useful guidance from our tech radar. The team were given the choice of which language to adopt, and they chose Java, and AWS as our cloud hosting platform. We currently host both serverless and EKS components in our integration platform. So far, we've used Lambda functions to execute code, step functions in code orchestration, AWS's API gateway to create and expose our APIs, secret manager to secure user password combinations and certificates, and parameter store for securing our environment parameters, all of which are written in Terraform. On our Jenkins pipeline, we've incorporated check marks for security vulnerability checking when our code is pushed to our dev branch in GitHub. We're currently exploring SonarQube to determine the value of incorporating that into our CI/CD pipeline. And we recently incorporated ServiceNow's Change API and are currently enhancing it further to carry out ECR scanning, creating JIRA tickets on our backlog for medium and high defects. And once our code is ready, we'll deploy into production if there's no external team dependencies. To gain a deeper understanding of our data, we've used AWS's Athena Analytics tool to interrogate the data received and to understand data flow patterns, which help us make informed decisions on when to deploy our code. Next slide, please. So what does our landscape look like today? We've got a mixture of integration owned by a central team with data flowing via files, but with some services too. This tends to hide complex business logic, which can make it difficult to reuse interfaces. So the tendency has been to create another interface, which obviously leads to multiple point-to-point integrations. Our cloud-based integration is growing rapidly, with teams building both products and integration in the cloud rather than being file-based. They're now APIs, or we publish events. Data is being shared between on-premise and cloud using a mixture of protocols, including file-based transfers to S3 buckets via Kafka topics or another messaging process of our choosing. And we use anti-corruption layers, or ACLs, as they're often referred to, as a level of abstraction between our cloud and legacy systems to perform mapping translation. Next slide, please. So asking the team for their feedback, they found it exciting, stretching at times, and the constant learning keeps them interested and engaged. And from my perspective, the team have made an incredible transition, learning so much in such a small amount of time. And they continue to amaze me every day with the work that they deliver. I'm truly blessed to have such an amazing teams. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Hi, I'm Anish Bhagwanji, the Senior Cloud Engineer working in the logistics space. And essentially, I'm looking after the kind of infrastructure for the solution that we build. So next slide, please. So as you may be aware, there are a lot of different reasons why you need to have multiple cloud vendors. You know, we've seen outages for Microsoft, AWS, and recently during this Christmas, we saw the outage for Google. So it's very ever more important to be multi-cloud vendors as possible so that you don't have all your eggs in one basket per se. And that's what we decided to do essentially. However, we were originally on AWS and we did migrate across to Azure. And next slide, please. These were the things that came up. So as you can see, some of the creative team at Microsoft didn't really think this through because, you know, in AWS it's EKS, in Azure it's AKS, so the naming is quite similar. The actual functionality is quite similar, so it's quite simple for us to migrate all of our workload from AWS across to Azure, and now we're a full Azure stack. Because we've got a very strong .NET skill base within the team, it meant that, you know, utilizing Azure helped us quite a lot as well. Now we do have a couple of components that are common across, you know, AWS or Azure. We try to use PaaS where possible. So Kafka, you can see, is the same across both. And Datadog is the same across both, and MongoDB is the same because it means that we can ensure that regardless of what vendor we go to, we can always have those two components for our monitoring, for our collections of database, and any messaging that we need to do. So it kind of keeps it agnostic as possible. Next slide, please. So how did we actually achieve this? Essentially, we used Terraform. I think Lorraine mentioned that already, but it's quite heavily used because it allowed us to actually migrate all of our workload from AWS to Azure because the providers are there already. They've been tested by community, and you know we're kind of a company that really promotes that ability of just trying and seeing what happens and how we can give the benefit back to the business. Terraform also means that we had some scripting there, so we use PowerShell quite a lot, which is quite standard really when it comes to infrastructure. We do actually use Chef and Ansible, but you know, if you want to keep it basics, those that you know we're okay to use both. In terms of the actual operating system, you know, we're a completely open company to Windows or Mac or Linux. You can literally just come along as long as you've got the right motivation and right ideas. We've always kind of been open to migrating anybody across. Now, the main thing that we focus on as a team is documenting, because we've seen many companies, and you may be there in the past, where a company does not do the documentation and you come back to an issue, it's considered legacy at that point, and you can't actually know how to, you know, figure things out. That's where we kind of, you know, made sure that the team actually takes responsibility of documenting everything so that today's kind of future is not going to be, again, tomorrow's legacy. Next slide, please. So what's in Azure? You can kind of see some parts might be confidential, but it's essentially a hub and spoke model where we try and use PaaS services where possible. The main benefit is that we have less overhead for the business and we can really just give back to the business wherever possible. You can see Kubernetes is mentioned there as well, just because we want to ensure that developers can develop and the teams can just give back to the business for any issues that they may have. And if you need to connect to on-premise, we've got the connectivity in place. Now, that connectivity in place wasn't quite easy because you can imagine you've got your on-prem servers and you've got your cloud servers. How do you get them to talk? And that's where we also have an additional team called the Azure Platform team. Next slide, please. They have a number of services that are provided. So you can see there's like so many already out there. And the good thing about this is the fact that we, as in teams individually, can actually define what goes into a service. So tomorrow I might say, oh, I want a CentOS 8 image, or for example, that is something that's driven by votes, that's driven by the people. So you have more autonomy as a team to be able to deploy any new services or request for new services. And the benefit is that it's actually going to be rolled out to the whole business, so everybody can utilize that if they want to. So it isn't a case of a siloed approach. It's more of a, we want this, there's enough demand for it, let's just get it across. It does actually lead to a problem though. So eventually some silos do occur and you do have a Wild West zone, and that's where we kind of call the cloud legacy side, and we really need to kind of, you know, keep track of that. The way we do that is via governance. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, governance is where we essentially are talking about, okay, what have we actually got in the cloud estate? You know, we're on AWS, we're on Azure, we're on Google Cloud as well. What is exactly there? How much are we actually paying? And that's where a lot of the numbers come in the top right. Obviously, some of it might be blurred. It's only because it might be confidential information. But essentially, we as a team agree and understand, okay, what are the best practices that we can take, and how can we look at this data and kind of give it back in the terms that the business understands. And that's where you can see the bottom right. We use a tool called Cloudability. It creates some nice charts. It makes it easy for us to kind of explain to the business, okay, you've got this particular thing that's considered legacy. Can we look at what the costs are, and can we actually drive that cost down as well? So the governance really helps to make sure that we're, sharing best practices, looking at our finances, and just, keeping on top of things. And that's me. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Anish. I am Archana from logistics team under retail domain, and I'm part of Apollo team. Team Apollo is just a name we chose for our team, as the mission to the moon was so successful and done first time, so was our challenge to be done. I have been with Sainsbury's for past 6 years and worked with various teams under integration. Next slide, please. Okay, let us tell how when we started Apollo, who and what we were. We were just bunch of few engineers, to be 6 to be precise, and we had varied backgrounds. And we had one common thing in mind, that we all like challenges. And our mission was to deliver fully modular, flexible, scalable integration for platform. And our asset was a highly supportive management who believed in our capabilities, mainly our capability to experiment with tools and decide upon new tools. Next slide, please. What were our challenges? As you know, inventory, shipment, order status, data is very important for logistics. Anytime a single view of this data is very essential to manage our inventory, shipment, and orders. So there was a non-availability of single view of logistic data. Integration with upstream systems were complex, and delivering a change was difficult. Risk owning to support integration tools which were going out of scope. Performance challenges, significant above industry cost and time scales. These were our challenges, and thus we started our journey. Next slide, please. Our journey. We had point-to-point integration. Believe me, our integration was not as mess as shown in the diagram, but yes, it was point-to-point integration. And we had a complex mainframe system doing our integration. So the mainframe system did point-to-point integration. We got in some domain experts to deliver, to make us understand what the mainframe systems did and what were the changes required, what was the idea behind them. And we came up a strategy of developing microservices so that each and every service is self-dependent and self-modular on its own. So we got certain benefits, so that we get certain benefits like speed to market, ability to create new report quickly, ability to plug and play new different systems, ability to support new business initiatives and network flows, ability to change process without impacting the enterprise. Next slide, please. So what we got through our journey, finally, what we built was a logistic platform. It became the heart of our systems. It had services like stock receipt, stock balance, stock adjustment, which took in reference data from location, product, and suppliers. The end state vision of our supply chain logistic platform was to be able to provide data to various other systems like supply chain, WMS, finance, transport, and all other systems of retail and third parties. Next slide, please. This is just a simple view of our delivery service. One of our microservices will be built. And soon building these services, we found that ACL, adapters, Kafka, platform, microservices became a common term and usable term, and people in the team were able to play with that. And the logistics system becoming the heart of the system, and Kafka became the arteries and veins to comprise the entire circulatory system of our logistics. Next slide, please. Team capabilities. What we started were a team of bunch of engineers with different capabilities, but what we learned across was important. We learned event sourcing and CQRS and implemented that. We mastered the logistics streaming capability. We defined and did reference data enrichment. We explored the ideas of ACLs and adapters and implemented them. We handled large message sizes. And the best part was innovation and experimenting with tools to make the right decision was our part of the day job. And that was really exciting. Next slide, please. This was our technology stack. We used the right tools for the right job where it is needed, neither trying to fix any tool at the wrong place. So we had infrastructure on Azure Platform with Kafka as our messaging layer, MongoDB and Azure Blob Storage as data layer. Services were built in .NET. Next slide, please. And soon it was that whatever architectural benefit of we had of the microservices, we were soon able to reap the benefits of that when came the Brexit. Brexit allowed us to build new teams and get more work, but barring any changes to the architecture, we had a solid architectural framework. Just to give you a background, when due to Brexit, any retailer, including Sainsbury, has to do a custom clearance at the border to take the goods to Northern Ireland. To bring these changes, we build more microservices, and we had certain challenges in getting the data, but we are up to it. We had a greater integration challenge in getting one round of data to custom clearance and then integrating it within an hour before the lorry leaves the depot. So soon our highly agile cloud-based solution, fully automated, starting from order to shipment and integration with third party, reaped the benefit. That's all with me. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Jamil. I'm a principal cloud engineer here at Sainsbury Tech. My colleagues previously have gone through a lot of the technical bits and bobs that we are using in AWS or Azure. Today, I didn't really want to go to technical. I am very much a technical person, and if we were to go into any technical details, we might still be talking about it tomorrow. So next slide, please. Briefly, I'll introduce myself. So a lot of people in the team, since I joined, have been calling me an AWS guru. I guess it's a bit of a community name for it. What this means is really I've been working with AWS for nearly 10 years now, and AWS is my background. So when I joined Sainsbury's almost a year ago, in the supply chain on a greenfield project, essentially we decided to go and invest a lot into AWS technologies and just deep dive into it. But I'm also an open source contributor, and this is something that I really want to share with you today. I really want to take this time to talk about open source communities and that sort of things. Being an open source contributor, doesn't necessarily mean that you write code and you submit patches and that sort of things. It can just simply be that you participate within a community around a project to provide feedback or to provide suggestions, that sort of things. And that's already quite a lot of things that you can do. There are a lot of communities around AWS and open source technologies. So I can't recommend enough for you guys, for your learning and progression in your life and different technical skills, to go and participate and get involved into open source communities. One of the things that I quite enjoy doing to try to share back knowledge that I have is to write technical blogs. I do have a few of them. One of them has nothing to do, in fact, at all with AWS. It's only got to do with things like VM and gaming and that sort of things on VMs and that sort of things. So it doesn't have to be, sharing your knowledge and sharing what you know, and the sort of things, the sort of experiences you have is also a great way to participate and get exposure for yourself and being able to refer to people on the sort of things that you've been working on throughout your life. And if you sum up those three things, really, this is how I end up being the principal cloud engineer for the supply chain here today in Sainsbury's. Next slide, please. So before Sainsbury's, I worked as a senior cloud engineer in a fintech, which was very interesting given that there are numerous security concerns and security things to get involved into with fintechs, obviously. I also was in SRE previously with a managed service provider. Before that, worked at HP after acquisition from an open source company called Eucalyptus. And then before that, I actually at uni was I was meant to be a developer. So the reason really why I wanted to show that is that there are so many different things that you'll be able to do throughout your lives that will get you to the next thing. And so you never really know what kind of opportunities will be coming next. And next slide, please. And so, I'm not here to talk about myself necessarily, apart from telling you that it's very important. The lessons I've learned throughout the years is that it's never too late to learn new stuff. Like a year ago, I started to do new things with technology, and technology has so many different aspects of it. You've got obviously everything that has to do with coding and infrastructure and cloud engineering and that sort of things. But you could also start pet projects. I've got pet projects with 3D printing or things to do with astronomy. It's got nothing to do with what I do today in the job, but this is the sort of things, this is the sort of pet projects that take me into doing IoT, for example. And as soon as you start to work in a such rich environment as AWS, where you have so many services, you might just find yourself to become very, you can move from being somebody who does web applications into starting to work closely with IoTs, devices and that sort of things. So you never really know. I would always encourage as much as possible all of you to discover new things, and because you never know what next opportunity that's going to take you to. And most of the team, we'll talk a bit more about the team later, I suppose. But one of the things that is mostly true, and we've hired in the supply chain team, in the cloud engineering team, new hires who literally came out of uni, who had only gone through an AWS Bootstrap camp, sort of a speed track training thing. They didn't even know about Git when they started, and you might not even know about Git when you start. But throughout sharing knowledge and training people and that sort of things, which is what we've done, the teams that I managed have been able to get their applications to production in just about 8 months, which is really fast for a company such as Sainsbury's with so much red tape and that sort of things, and a lot of legacy systems all around. So it's never too late. It's never too late, really, to learn new stuff. And I can't, like I said many times, I can't encourage you more to start looking into new things. Next slide, please. So Hacker Job is how I got this position. So I thought, given this is a conversation between Sainsbury's, all of you, and Hacker Job, and this is organized by Hacker Job, I thought I'd mention it. So next slide, please. So, I would imagine that a lot of you are on Hacker Job today. Have created an account. You also probably have an account on things like LinkedIn, Hire, Indeed, or a number of platforms out there for hiring. And I personally find that Hacker Job probably was the best experience I had through finding a new prospect. The team of people who work at Hacker Job are very dedicated. Almost too dedicated when they call you twice a day to just follow up on the job. But that just shows how much involved the people who are following your account on Hacker Job are involved. And they, after you've got interviews, they call you back to, sort of feel out, give you a feeling about how it went and how it goes with the company, how you feel about it and that sort of things. and even train you or just give you some guidance onto maybe this is the sort of feedback you had from the previous interview. Maybe you should try to be a bit more positive or talk more about this thing or that other thing. So it's really dedicated team. And there are challenges in the platform as well. So maybe some of you have gone through platforms where you do online code testings. At the start, to be honest, when I started on some of the AWS challenges on the Hack platform, I didn't score too well, and I was a bit frustrated because I'd been working with it for so long. But what this actually taught me is not so much about the answers, but more about what sort of questions people were going to ask me in interviews potentially. So it's something I would definitely encourage a lot of you to go on and take those challenges. Just to to see where you are at and probably prepare better for the next interviews that you have. And one of the great things I like, the last point I have on this slide is that you can really communicate again with the people from HackerJob and being very straight up. And so next slide, please. And it is very much the same, and it is very much the same with Sainsbury's. So this is why I didn't have to change this next slide too much. If we get to see you applying for Sainsbury's for a job with us in the Sainsbury's tech community, just be upfront about what it is that you want to do and the sort of technologies that you want to learn. Have done interviews with people. And the first question I ask them is what it is that they want to learn, the sort of things that they want to do. There is no point for you to try to get a job that you are going to be hating every day, and you're not going to want to wake up in the morning to get to. So if you have an interview with somebody from Sainsbury's, I can't encourage you more to just be upfront about your expectations. But Sainsbury's is an amazing place to work. Like you've seen before, I've changed jobs quite a number of times over the past few years. And I joined just when COVID started. And I can't tell you, even remotely, the sense of people come first in terms of culture and the way that people are treated and the employees are treated within Sainsbury's is really incredible. I'm very happy where I am now, like I said, really the culture here is amazing for that, and there are loads of opportunities. So, like I mentioned earlier, like my colleagues mentioned earlier, some of us work in Azure, some of us work in GCP, Advs, that sort of things, which means there's probably something out there for you. So that's it. Thank you very much. We're going to questions. Oh yeah, and you can find me over there on Slack or GitHub or whatever.
Thank you very much for all the speakers. So we had a couple of questions that came in prior to the event. So what I'll do is I'll throw them out first. I've seen that Anish and John and Lorraine have been smashing through a lot of the Q&A in the last 10 or 15 minutes. So what I'll do is there's a few questions in there that I think are quite interesting. That people may not have seen the answers to, so I'll probably throw a few of those back. But it's just as a starting point, I'll throw them these questions at you one by one. So, Lorraine, as we're all aware, I guess at the moment, we're currently living in what most of us would consider unprecedented times, and things have really changed over the last year. So, as a manager, I'd love to hear about how you've motivated your colleagues and your perspective on how to keep going even when times are tough.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess when we first moved into lockdown last March, it was a huge change for everybody. So we started to have sort of daily check-ins at the beginning of the day, just to see how everybody was. That was an optional session. So if you wanted to join, if you felt like you needed just to have a bit of a team therapy session, then you joined. And then as things moved on, when we sort of got into the rhythm of working from home every day, we essentially changed that. So we didn't get together other than for our daily stand-ups at the start of the day every day. We got together on a Friday afternoon and put a placeholder in our diaries as a wind down, sit down meeting where we'd run quizzes. and yeah, and did Pictionary online as well, which was really good fun. So that was what we tried to do to sort of stay connected as a team. And I personally have weekly one-to-ones with all my team members just to see how they're progressing with their personal development, and also how they're coping with homeschooling and just their general well-being, really. And it's a great opportunity for them to raise any concerns and for them to discuss how I can support them further. But I guess the biggest motivation is the work. So we have that constant learning in our sprints, and the work, we do try and keep it interesting. We also have game days. We had a recent game day with Gremlin, and we just injected chaos into our platform to see how it behaved. So it's keeping the work interested, definitely keeps them motivated. And also we meet up every Monday for weekly KT sessions. So yeah, I think it's all about, just making sure that we are staying connected as a team, and just supporting one another. And even, I think it was Monday was supposed to be the most depressing day of the year, I think. So I was conscious that maybe everyone's mood had dropped. So I literally just pinged out on our Teams channel, anybody fancy joining me for a coffee? And pretty much every team member just down tools, and we just chit chatted for half an hour. So just, it's, I think just being there to support one another is really important during these unprecedented times.
Amazing. And I would agree. I think that it's interesting that everyone's having to think a little bit out of the box and come up with suggestions and topics and tasks that you usually wouldn't do, but just to keep your mind ticking over. So it's great to see that Sainsbury's are having a big push on that. Anish, coming back to Azure and the recent changes you've made, I'd love it if you could tell us more about any challenges you faced when transitioning from AWS to Azure. Was it all smooth sailing?
For the most part, yeah, because like I said, Terraform was the provider that we use. Terraform has a number of providers, and they get updated quite frequently by the cloud vendors. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there were some hiccups because it's a platform team that we are kind of leaning back on. Some of the requirements we were coming with were quite new to them as well. So we were using Kubernetes, and we're trying to utilize Kubernetes as much as possible, be it for RBAC, be it for making it as resilient as possible. So there was some challenges, but I think on the kind of grand scheme of things, it was pretty easy.
Nice, cool, good to hear. Archana, talk to us more about how Brexit has impacted the work you're doing from an architectural perspective. What new challenges has it presented? Still there, Archana?
Okay. Yeah. Brexit was a great challenge to us, as it was driven by timescales. We had to deliver something in a very short time span, but the groundwork we had already done. We had made a flexible and modular architecture so that we can plug and play services. So what we had to do is to ramp up the team, add few more services to it, to our current architecture. And we were pretty much building upon the architecture what we had planned earlier. And few of the challenges were like the data was sometimes which was initially was non-essential, like country of origin, became an important data for Brexit. So we had to find this certain data in different systems. So getting this data into our platform was a challenge. Then another challenge was we had to integrate with government gateway. That itself wasn't a challenge, but the challenge was integrating with government gateway and getting the data sent to the government and getting back their approval within a stipulated time so that the lorry could leave the depot and go for the shipment. So this stipulated time frame within which this interaction with the government gateway has to be done was challenging. So we had these challenges were part of the integration team. We were also having another teams which were working on the app side of the Brexit, and other team working on the digitization side of the Brexit, and many other teams working under the hood. Thank you.
Perfect. So John, you touched on a little bit of this while we were going through the session, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the engineering arm at Sainsbury's Tech. So you're newer to the company, if you like, that you joined during COVID. So why should people want to come and work there?
Well, I mean, I covered, and I could talk about a lot of the cloud engineering work that I do with teams, and there are obviously a lot of the software engineers that work within the team. But when we have more Sainsbury's Tech global, so all the different business units, if you wish, within Sainsbury's Tech, we have conversations about looking into together around our tech radar, so which is kind of trying to pilot which technologies we should be using. This is something that happens across the families, and everybody has an input, just as much as some different families have concerns or projects around things that have absolutely nothing to do with supply chain, but just by participating into those meetings or attending to those meetings, you either get to learn new things or just make suggestions. So we were so not so long ago, there were a presentation about how we can use machine learning typically on sites in our stores to try to prevent theft and that sort of things, and it just triggered a number of conversations to know what technology to use and that sort of things. And I have nothing to do with that person, with that family in particular, the people involved into the project, but I just could do suggestions just as much, and a lot of those suggestions are received very, very well. And so this is what I was mentioning earlier. You never really know what you're going to be doing next. I obviously have my center of interest and center, my domain of expertise, my area of expertise, but if somebody within Sainsbury's starts to work on a project and starts to get very interested into something else done somewhere else, they might actually just get themselves involved into that.
Perfect.
So it's very polyvalent.
Lorraine, big question here, and let's see what is your favorite of your project children. So what's your favorite project that you've worked on so far?
Oh, crikey. I would say I was involved in a project some time ago when I was an engineer, and that was to create an enterprise service called Stored Value Service. So that service created digital wallets based on marketing campaigns, put those coupons into that digital wallet, and that was something that we integrated with our groceries online platform. So it was great to be able to not only work with marketing teams, but also with our digital teams as well, so it gave you a real good wider view of how the organisation works. So I really enjoyed doing that.
Yes.
And I learned lots about APIs and error handling. So yeah, it was really enjoyable.
Great. Anish, can you tell us about any exciting new releases you're working on at the moment?
So we're trying to just kind of stabilize what we've got already. Essentially, we've kind of proven the fact that, hey, you can move across from AWS to Azure, and then you can actually keep something that's considered a tier 1 application supportable as well. And essentially what we're trying to do is trying to make that kind of widespread, so that if other individuals within Sainsbury's or the team, want to take this on board, they can take it on. So that's the kind of exciting things we're doing, where we're just trying to make sure we've got something stable, and then we're trying to kind of promote it so that if other teams do it as well, it kind of makes the whole process easier, essentially.
Yes. Back to you, Archana. I'll take at the end of this, I'll make sure that I give everyone the links that you can apply to jobs if you're interested in proceeding with things at Sainsbury's. But I know that Sainsbury's are hiring for a lot of roles at the moment, which is amazing given the circumstances that we're in. So can you tell us a little bit about how that onboarding process works?
The onboarding process is quite straightforward and simple and is quite friendly enough for the newcomer. We introduce the new joiner with the team, and every team member tries to give the overview of the work they are doing so that the new joiner can understand what the team is. Then we'll have involve them in weekly sprints so that they can understand the process which we are following. Besides the technology, the process is an important part. We involve the new joiner in that, and we also assign him or her a mentor to guide through the process so that he comes up to speed with what he wants to do and what contribution he or she wants to make.
And then back to you finally, John, before we go to the questions that have come in over the session. What does the team structure look like? So how is the different team structures at the moment?
Yeah, so that's so like I said, I'm the principal cloud engineer, which really only means I'm an engineer like everybody else, only I get to oversee many different projects. So basically all the services that we are working on, they have a specific dedicated pool of engineers working on the project with an engineering manager and that sort of things. And we also have a cloud engineer or two that is sort of embedded in the day-to-day life of that project. But the thing that we definitely have been working on within the supply chain family is trying to make sure that we have, as much as everybody can sort of go and pick and choose a way to do things, we very early on defined a number of standards and technologies to use so that we could really only focus on to what matters, which is delivering and building applications and deploying them, and not so much spend a lot of time on trying all the newest and shiniest things. But the way that the team then is working is that every cloud engineer, regardless of their level, which is why we don't really have this notion within the team of seniorship in anything. It's a real sense of ownership. So we really try to make sure that everybody that is working on the day-to-day life of the projects is very knowledgeable about that project, is responsible as much as possible in documenting sort of the ins and outs of the projects, if you will, in terms of data, who are the consumers and producers and that sort of things, and what is the sort of things that we are going to expose to other teams. But the responsibility of the cloud engineering team within the family is to be able to take on any project. So say, we did have, as a prime example of that, we did have one of our engineers who had to take a leave of absence for COVID-related reasons, and we had no problem basically for this period of time assigning another cloud engineer to the project, because the technologies were the same, the standards were the same, so that person could just carry on the work that was done before, and it was all done with Advs technologies. So that's sort of the way that we've structured teams within the supply chain.
Perfect. So I'm gonna throw questions from the audience now. Any of the speakers, feel free to jump in, unless I'll let you know if they're particularly directed at you. There's a question on what software do you use for running your agile practices?
I believe we all use Jira.
This one's already been answered, but it'd be interesting to go back to it, Anish, for anyone that hasn't seen it in the Q&A functionality. But it was regarding not documented, not done, how to ensure your documentation is genuinely useful for tomorrow's needs. So that one's at you, Anish.
Yeah, essentially, it's a living kind of document. We have a template, and then we're trying to just evolve that as we go along. Obviously, if you ask a developer, they'll probably say we hate documenting, it's just a pain. But to be honest, if you don't document today, like tomorrow when somebody else is looking at your code and doesn't have a clue about what's going on, they're going to be completely confused. So it is a balance of understanding what we can do. And if you have any particular issues, any quirks that you can document, so it is an evolving kind of process, is what I'm trying to get to.
Perfect. Really interesting question from Paolo, more of a statement, but just get everyone's insight into some support and some guidance. So, like I said, I did a coding bootcamp last year, and getting through 2020 was pretty challenging. Thinking giving up and then getting motivated to get going again. As an older junior dev looking for work, can you give some advice on how not to let the current climate put one down? So whoever wants to answer that one.
I think organisations are generally doing a great job at onboarding people during this process. So, these unprecedented times rather. So I certainly wouldn't give up. I would definitely. I'd look at emerging technologies, and I would certainly apply. And by practice from interview processes, then you get to learn what organisations are looking for.
Anyone else got any guidance before we move on?
Again, I'll just pitch in with my 2 cents of what I was saying earlier. It's whatever it is you're developing, working on, you never know what this actually might get to you doing next. So even if it is a pet project, it might actually be the thing that cheer you up, just because you get sometimes so much not pleasure, but like it feels so good sometimes to just being able to achieve something. So I mean, I used to do electronics years and years ago, and I started again to play with IoT devices and Arduinos and that sort of things, and I feel like I'm completely a noob again, where I used to know all about it. And just being able to achieve to do something again in a language that you haven't touched in years might just be something that made me feel really happy. So I suppose it's, like I said, you might just be able to work on something that, you know, just gets you through the day and makes you gets you to feel good about yourself. And I certainly, I mean, especially with those COVID times, having pet projects on the side definitely gets me through the day. So I could not recommend that more.
Amazing. So I'm going to throw this one at you, Archana. So what I actually quite enjoy from my side working with Sainsbury's is that tech is always, there's always a new tech coming into the business, and there's everything's emerging, so you're very much at the forefront of everything. I think one of the challenges when you are one of those forward-thinking businesses is that there's a lot of new tech coming in, and it means that people need to train up and get around that. So do you allow for training time during the working hours?
Yeah, we do. Whenever a new technology comes in, like our team was formed, where people had different backgrounds, so of integration, but we had to come up with and get up to speed to the new technologies of Kafka, .NET, MongoDB, Docker, Kubernetes, and whatnot, and AWS, Azure. So we did allow for a training session where we had online trainings. Second thing we allowed was we were given a play area of AWS where we could build our services, understand them, and practically implement them. Practical implementation is more of what support we got from the management, though that AWS platform was a throwaway, but we got that platform and we implemented our training into that platform. So training is part of our day-to-day job, and learning new technologies is what gets us motivated. And we just do mentoring sessions also, where a senior engineer mentors the newcomer and gives him or her an opportunity to upskill the people. And we also follow a T-shaped architecture where everyone is like not only doing one thing which they were initially doing, but they have an interest in doing certain other things. They can also design, architect, code, do testing, and based on the sprint goals.
Perfect. There's
Sorry, Darren, I was just going to add as well. So as an organisation, we're given 2 days a period, which is every 4 weeks, as protected personal development time. And during that time, the team member can explore whatever is of interest to them. It doesn't have to be anything specifically related to the day-to-day tasks. It can be something, say, for example, public speaking, for example, anything really that they choose for their own personal development. And also, as I mentioned earlier on, we also bring learning into sprints as well. It's really important that teams get that time to explore technologies that are out there. And as John mentioned as well too, we've got the tech radar that we can use to determine whether a technology has already been assessed by others within the organisation and whether we should adopt it, whether it's deemed to be unfit or whether it's currently being assessed. So that kind of gives us a guidance as well.
Cool, perfect. I've seen a lot of questions in the group and in the Q&A and chat and everywhere, basically, just on how to apply for jobs if you want to do so with Sainsbury's. So I'm just going to drop that in now. I just mention what the thing is, and then we'll make sure that as a business hacker job, send this out to all the attendees afterwards. But if you want to apply to Sainsbury's, the best way to get to the jobs that we're talking about on this would be going to www.sainsbury's.jobs/roles/digital-tech-data and then / and then that should take you to all of the roles that we're looking at here. Obviously, if there's anything else you need assistance with, we'll make sure that there is an opportunity afterwards. To this question on, are the Microsoft and AWS certifications, or I think Anish, you've moved it, so this might be one you can pick up here, but are any Microsoft and AWS certifications something for candidates and your engineers to aim for? So I'll throw that to you, Anish, given you answered it.
Yeah, it's just a case of, it's part of your personal development, so you can go and learn a particular area if you want to. Certification is not mandatory. Obviously, some people don't like exams, so it's a case of if you want to learn a particular area, you go ahead. You want to go on a course, you can go ahead, and that's something Sainsbury's does really well. They support you. I can see John nodding his head. Seems like he probably agrees. If you want to add anything more, but yeah, that's my take on it.
I definitely can't echo that more. I mean, I used to have certifications that are long expired now. That doesn't mean I am out of qualifications anymore. And we've hired people without any qualifications in particular. And today I would feel very comfortable living all on their own, working on the project. And if were to demonstrate that, we had a junior, very junior person who started somewhere in March. And over the Christmas period, she was all on her own, making sure that the platform of her team was not going down, and nothing went down because of the work of the obviously the software engineers to make sure that the software was highly efficient, and then the platform was obviously highly available. But she is that person in particular is doing very well and had no prior knowledge of AWS in particular. Okay. So.
I guess is the final question, because it's the one that always comes up in all the webinars, and it came up right at the end there, so I'm not surprised. What was the transition like when going from working in office to working fully remotely at Sainsbury's? Like, how did the Sainsbury's as a business cope with that?
I don't mind jumping in. I think Sainsbury's as an organisation have been brilliant. I think we were probably one of the first before even lockdown started to maybe work from home. We're as a line manager, we're completely empowered to have those conversations with our colleagues to sort of say, how can we support you? Bearing in mind that lots of people have got little ones running around, so it's really important that we are mindful of that and that we do adopt different working practices to cater for that. And there's nothing better than a cute small child appearing in the background, or a dog or a cat. So yeah, I think we've been extremely supportive as an organisation.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of kids and dogs coming to Zoom sessions. It always makes it a little bit more enjoyable than the same 45 faces that I see on a day-to-day, so I love a good dog. So we got to the end of the session. I've literally just copied and pasted all the questions that we didn't get to during this session. So what I'll do is I'll ensure that we find a way to get all the answers out to you. Firstly, thank you very much to all of the speakers. It's been a really informative session, and I think it's incredible how many questions got answered during that Q&A. So thanks for everyone jumping in as we went along. If you want to reach out, we'll make sure that there is a way to do so afterwards. It'll be sent via the HackerJob side, and then I look forward to seeing some of you guys hopefully join Sainsbury's in the coming months and years. Thanks for your time all. Take care.
Thank you.